Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks to Arnie for kind of nudging on us on this. I'm not sure where the other credit goes, probably to Jeremy and such to pull together. So thank you for that. Obviously, this is an exciting time for a lot of reasons, but I think it's kind of neat to see the activity happening out here that we've been planning as a commission for many years, right? We were just talking about the ALP, which is all 5-6 years ago or even before. And it's neat to have some activity here, but then obviously to have these folks advocate for us and be working on our behalf as we've sent them to Madison to do, right? And it's not always do you get opportunities like this come around that we were successful, right? And so I think it's awesome to celebrate moments like that. But to acknowledge there's, a lot of times you put 6, 7, 8 proposals forward and you may not be successful in a single one. So thanks to everyone's involvement, I would say, on that.
Well, Mayor, I'm kind of getting a big head on it because this is the first one that I was involved with on the state level and it was a success. So I guess I'm looking for that track record.
You're talking first from now on, Arnie. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good average.
Yeah, there we go.
Put you in baseball.
And Jeremy, right? I mean, it wasn't too long ago that we were just kicking off a whole new model out here and a whole new debate about how we should administer and really what the best direction for the airport was. Kind of not really knowing fully, I think, the scale which Sam Valley's opportunity was going to present us. So, having a professional airport manager seated here wasn't an easy process for those of us that had to sit through lots and lots and lots of meetings, special meetings every month. I mean, to tell a story and educate and to listen, a lot of listening in terms of that. So, kudos to Jeremy for being here. Long days, early mornings. Just to kind of get the airport in a position that I think, really positions itself for growth very well.
Thank you.
You don't always get kudos, right?
Kudos.
Mm-hmm.
I know Jeremy almost missed the opening of duck hunting season because he forgot about it. And it's because of the workload. And fortunately, one of his friends gave him a call and said, "Are you coming up or not?"
A few phone calls on the fishing boats.
That's right.
And is Hunter on another vacation? Canada or something?
No, he's in there fielding phone calls so they don't get
Part-timer.
so they don't interrupt. But
So,
No,
these two,
it's just,
tell us
it's
what your
it's
experience.
exciting because this is one of the few opportunities where we've had a chance to work together with so many stakeholders from across the region on finding something that we all agree on, that all makes sense, that we can all advocate for in the same direction. I think it speaks to the bigger trajectory of where things are going with Wisconsin Rapids areas, that people are finally working together, not worrying about who's taking credit for things, and making sure that things are just getting done. So it's all the work that we've put in the last couple of years now, and with Senator Testin's help this session in the state budget, it's been great to work with all the local stakeholders, making sure that we're working with Sand Valley and making sure we had an opportunity to get out to abandoned dunes to see some of the exciting things that a similar community to ours, were able to experience because of the opportunities from a big resort coming. So I think economic development as a whole really needed this infrastructure investment, and it just made sense for us in the legislature. It made sense for the governor, and thankfully local partners were there to push us across the finish line. So I appreciate everybody's efforts here, from private sector to government, to making sure that we can get something done that pays dividends and droves for Wisconsin Rapids.
Yeah, and this was, for me, being my first state budget, I really enjoyed it because this was a true fashion collaborative effort. I mean, I can remember a weekend on the job, I got the tour of the city with Mayor Verwink, and we got to go to a number of different projects that they're working on in the area, and one of them was right here, and why this is needed, obviously with the development of Sand Valley coming in, and even before the course officially opened on May 1st, had 100 flights coming in for preview play. I mean, that says a lot, that people from around the world are coming here to central Wisconsin, and they see opportunity here. They're not just coming here to play golf. They want to invest in our workforce. They want to invest in the area. Developers are taking a look at the Wisconsin River and seeing what it can be, and to really help diversify our local economy that for years was dependent on the strength of the paper industry. And what always struck me is when I'd go door to door when I ran for this office was when people tell me, oh, this is a dying area. Well, it doesn't have to be. And so we just, from day one, anything that we do to give this area a shot in the arm, to show them that we do listen, we do care. And then just the heavy lifting that we had to do to get our colleagues on board, because I remember the first day when I told this to some of my Senate colleagues, like Senator Fitzgerald and some members of the Joint Finance Committee, they said, never gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
And for the last 9 months, literally all we talked about down in Madison to our colleagues, why we needed this and building the case, and it paid off. And that's why we're here today to really celebrate the work that all of us have put into this to make sure this project gets completed.
That's the neat thing about the budget process is people complain a lot about how long it went, and it went a couple months longer than we thought it would. I honestly think if this budget was passed in June and on the governor's desk, I don't think we'd be sitting here today. I think it took that extra effort and that extra time we're talking about other things related to transportation to make this project one of the top ones that got into the governor's desk. So, you know, it's in a way fortunate for us. We have the extra time to advocate and to keep pushing and to keep finding new and adventurous things. And as we're waiting for that state budget to develop past June, Mammoth Dunes open for preview play. And it just really intensified the push for people to understand how big this is getting to be and how fast it's growing. So it's amazing the coincidences that all fell into place to make this thing get onto the governor's desk, and for him to not necessarily like earmarks, to have him say, you know what, this one makes sense. We've got to get this through. And that's what our job is, like the mayor said, is to get down to Madison, figure out a way to get stuff done, get the results back home so we can start growing and building and becoming fresh and new again. I grew up not more than 6 blocks from here in the 2 houses I lived on in Taylor and Grove, and I remember this airport when I was a kid in the 80s and the 70s and 80s and 90s. It was busy. We had activity. We're a bigger airport than a lot of these smaller regional area airports are. So this isn't just a tiny little airport like some people tried to call it, and some stories that actually drove us across the finish line. So, you know, and all that conjecture that pushed it over the edge, you know, and all of the negativity that some wanted to try to put onto it, it didn't matter much to our colleagues to say, hey, this still makes sense and it's still something we got to push for. So it's a great turn of events, and the way everything came together is just, it's going to benefit Wisconsin Rapids, and you can't be prouder than anything in that. So.
Well, I think the cascading effect, you know, we talked about a lot of priorities that are happening in our region, right? And I think when we think about successful work that this will now pave the way for, I think the neat part about it is regionally we have been working and I think even across county lines, right? You know, and trying to strengthen our area again, and you know, and to grow the economy and create job opportunities, and just bring about a whole new kind of vibe and new investment. I think that's what this, and talk about kind of the challenges and the pitfalls and some of the kind of 11th hour antics that kind of were going on, you know, that questioned maybe the credibility of it. And I think it almost kind of, and for me, it almost, you know, it kind of crystallized the fact that this was a legitimate and credible investment to be making in economic development. And as you guys saw with Foxconn and everything else, there's so much debate about what investments and what sometimes public funds should be used for, and there wasn't any better project, of course, we're partial to it, but an infrastructure investment like this, right, that the benefits are you know, that are far and wide beyond some of the work we've been seeing. I mean, every month or every quarter we look at traffic volume or traffic information, why people are using this airport. It's always very indicative of the fact that it's a multi-use. There's benefits that are way beyond just, you know, the traffic from the Sam Valley, most recent Sam Valley activity. But that's what I think the neat part about just at a basic level, this project, and that the letter of, you know, the request for support was purely infrastructure and purely economic development 101.
Yeah, and you know, it's at the same time working the state budget, you mentioned the Foxconn debate. And one of the things we're able to use towards the end of the discussion in selling this across the finish line is that we wouldn't be as strong as advocates for this if we didn't think this would be, in Sand Valley in conjunction with it, that this wasn't our Foxconn. On a scale comparable to a city and a municipal area the size of Wisconsin Rapids, this is our opportunity. This is something that even across the aisle, people recognize the need for Foxconn, and the vote we took to make sure that got across the finish line. So as we talked to colleagues that last couple of weeks, like, hey, This is the chance Rapids has for a Foxconn type investment. We're not gonna see an employer come here with 12,000 jobs at one bid. We've got companies like Renaissance, who has Google's backing now, and Sand Valley here, and Mariani, and Ocean Spray, and all these other industry groups that are using this already. Just, you know, those things that, like I said, that when they all fall together, it just makes the debate so much easier. So.
It's been kind of interesting sitting out here sometimes talking to some of the people that come in, and I know when Jeremy was talking to a pilot the other day that had it was a twin engine plane, I believe it was, said that he looks to be back. He's looking at starting a business here. Now, there's not just traffic coming in for pleasure, there's traffic coming in for business, so we're seeing a lot of it. And I know people wonder, well, where are all these people staying? The pilots that come in with the corporate jets primarily are staying in Wisconsin Rapids. There are a few that are being housed up in Stevens Point due to the card arrangements or the company that they're with, but primarily they're staying in town. They're going around, they're using the facilities, they're making runs up to the cheese factory because they've asked for directions. And so I think overall there is a steady pattern of growth coming into us. I think I'm extremely pleased to see the progress that's going on the airport. Not only this project that's going on outside right here next year is the small runway is going to be widened and rebuilt. That was already a pre-approved project that was in the works. And then hopefully when we determine what time the funds will be released to us and how they're going to be released to us will determine as to how we can progress and how soon we can start on the next project. But the good news is, as the commission members know, we've already started the engineering work on it. We already contacted with the BOA through MSA doing our engineering work, and we decided several months ago to go ahead and start the engineering work. Even if this project wasn't funded right now, we knew that it was going to have to be funded at some point in time. So why not get the engineering? So we've got a head start already on this project, so our delays will be not as long as one would anticipate they'd be if we had to start right away from selecting a engineering firm and all that. So we're ready to go. This project will hopefully be a to-go project as soon as we determine what guidelines we have to work with, whether it's a BOA, the DOT, or whoever it is we need to work with.
And I think Brad and I were remarking before we started our little discussion here, the ALP, the airport layout plan, and how oftentimes as elected officials we get criticized, I would say unfairly, because we do think long range. We do have plans that we adopt and we place on the shelf for the moment in time where they become relevant and necessary. And I think you start looking at improvements such as this, you know, we have been thinking multi-year and a few years out, so that way when we do have opportunities, we can deploy the capital or we can tell the story much more effectively. And I think when you wrote that package of support in December, and you know, beautifully written in terms of telling the story and the benefits, and then having all of these folks around the community come in behind it, I think really validated the fact that you know, we are embracing sort of economic opportunities where sometimes we get criticized for sending things down the road or you know, not taking advantage of them. And I think this was just incredibly opportunistic for everyone involved to you know, really, you know, slam dunk and take it forward. So I think that's the exciting part, and I'm glad you bring up the plan, because that's a lot of people say, well, what is your plan? If you don't have your plan, you can't work your plan. And I think we're doing that here, and this has been a great example. Even the 4-member municipalities have kind of supported us, I would say, thankfully, right? Our boards and city councils have to earmark the monies to operate this place every year, and you know, it's pitted against other priorities in our budget process, but yet we continue to maintain this as a priority for our region and our community. So I think that's also another important point to make. Others in the room have anything to say? Glenn's here. Any questions for these guys even? I was interested in kind of what were the challenges as you were kind of getting close to the finish line, but I think you touched on those pretty well. Obviously, this project put our community on the map in a way that it hadn't been maybe before. Obviously, the excitement of the project and just the national and probably international attention that's been placed on Sam Valley is something that we can really hold up as an exciting point.
Yeah, and besides the negative connotation that the AP story tried to put on it, that recognition and that value that the Sam Valley name had going into the debate, you couldn't talk to anybody inside the Capitol, even before we introduced this idea, you couldn't talk to anybody inside the Capitol that didn't know about Sam Valley, that didn't know of what was going on in central Wisconsin. From every, most other legislators, the staff, even the lobbyists in the building would talk about, hey, how's Sam Valley coming? What's going on in Sam Valley? And so it's been constant for the last 2 years. It's been on the tip of everybody's tongue. So, besides what the negativity of the one story tried to say, it's been a huge positive for us to have that on the tip of everybody's tongue to make sure that when these projects come up and these ideas come up, everybody's like, oh yeah, I know what that's for. Oh yeah, I know what that is. And even during the debate on the assembly floor, when it got mentioned 32 times during the debate because of that article, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Everybody in the state of Wisconsin is talking about what's going on up here. You can't beat that. I mean, what is the old saying? You can't buy free publicity, right, Joe? So, I mean, that's the goal here, is to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing, why it's important, how we're going to go about getting it done, and at the end of the day, to make sure that even when the legislature's on board, that I think between Senator and Testin, I probably met with the governor's office 6-7 times each to try to say, hey, this is it. This is the priority. This is number one. You got to follow through on this. You got to come on up here, be here for the grand opening, or come and just see it. And so we'll get him up here to take a round or something, but he hasn't been yet. But he knows about it because everybody in the staff talks about it. So that's the beautiful part of this whole debate.
Well, yeah, even before I was sworn in office, I met with people like Representative Krug and others to take a look at what are going to be the priorities for this budget moving forward. And the biggest priority was the Wisconsin Rapids area. As other areas of the district and the state have been fairly successful in recovery, this area kind of lagged behind a little bit. And so this was a chance for us to really make the case. And as Representative Krug mentioned, a lot of people already knew about this project, and some of them helped pave the way to create the TIF district.
Yeah, we all voted for it last year.
So to me, that unfortunately some politics got interjected into the process, but that's going to happen in anything. But at the end of the day, people back home understand why we need this. We made the strong case in the legislature to get this, and this is the result. And just goes to show that when we all kind of row in the same direction, we can get a lot accomplished. And I look forward to working with the stakeholders in this area in the future on future projects, and anything that we can do to spur economic growth in this area, I'm behind it 100%.
There's just one thing I wanted to comment on. Of course, now we're all getting the questions. I'm guessing you guys are too. What are you going to spend all this money on? And because the first and foremost point, I guess, in general, I'm thinking what this does is it offers us an opportunity for us to accommodate new levels of activity with safety first. Being able to move several aircraft around at the same time, building the infrastructure that is necessary to have 6, 7, 8 or more aircraft parked out here, maybe most likely more in the future.
Glenn's going like 18 or 20. So.
without having to be concerned about whether they're going to bump into one another, or if there's incursions out there, so that having the infrastructure in place to accommodate that traffic, and then also putting a good foot forward, whether it be Sand Valley traffic or any business or entity that flies in here, making sure that we make a good impression on them the first time they step out of a plane, which might be the first time they've ever set foot in Wisconsin, certainly in the community. Having nice facilities that can accommodate their plane says a lot about the facility and the community in general.
More traffic right there.
There you go.
Yeah, but it's Iron Mountain though, wasn't it?
And that's the thing about this airport in particular, is it's been a hub for air traffic since 1928. I mean, if you think about that, 1928. I mean, the first manned flight wasn't much earlier than that. So this isn't something that's new. This isn't something that hasn't had a massive amount of activity before. And that's the other thing that people forget about sometimes. It's not this tiny little airport. If you're sitting here, you don't get the magnitude of this until you're sitting here looking out there to see everything that's possible. If you're at home and you're watching or reading an article about it, if you haven't seen it, you have to, because this isn't just some tiny little middle of nowhere podunk little municipal. This is something that has a lot of opportunity and a lot of draw and a long time history of making it a draw. So that's what folks need to understand in the long run, is that this isn't something that we just came up with. This is something that's been building for decades. Any questions? Joe, Caitlin? Tom, I know you're behind the camera.
Glenn, I've only shared what you mentioned to me earlier in our discussion with a couple people here. I don't know if you feel comfortable explaining to us what you're aware of for next year's activity already, and
Yeah, it's, the bookings are, for next year are already on 15 times what we were booked the same time last year for this year. So, yeah, the word is out, and so it's, I think the traffic is gonna be exponential, and this is gonna be the front door for a lot of guests from all over the country. Their first impression of central Wisconsin. And
We'll get to be like North Bend eventually, so.
one thing Glenn mentioned to me is that there is even possibly people that would have come this year. He said most likely they captured a lot of that, but people that are putting off their first trip until next year.
Yeah, sure.
That once there is 2 and 3 courses open out there, so there's probably building demand just because of the openings, the future openings that we don't even, we at the airport, I'm sure you probably do, but we at the airport here yet don't realize what that will mean for us, so.
yeah, there's been quite a number of private aviation companies as well that have been contacting me for the last 2 months that I've been putting off the conversations about, that, that want to know how they can invest in and market this area, from a private aviation standpoint, to bring more people here. They know they've partnered with Band and Dunes or other resorts and know that it's a viable market. So we'll look forward to
Sounds like a winter project.
Yeah, exactly. So
I think we're gonna be busy this year.
I think we've all probably gotten some form of the question of economic impact, right? What is the economic impact or return on investment for the $4 million that the state's investing, or even the $1.5 million that we're investing in the runway and some of the other things? And I think thinking back to some of those early economic impact statements, and so it's too soon to really probably run a strong economic impact statement other than extrapolating maybe the data from the users you've had this year. But I'm always reminded of these types of pieces in our economy, like an airport or a wastewater treatment plant or some of the others. They really have a critical role in growing and sustaining business in our area. And if you don't have safe and efficient and modern facilities like this, you're just not going to be a player. And I think that's, in summary for me, what's exciting is our communities, despite having some economic challenges and some recovery that's maybe lagged, or even some stability issues or challenges, is the fact that we've continued to invest. We haven't retreated. We haven't said, oh, you know what, we're not an area, woe is us, an area that's worth investing. And I think my city council reminds me of that, because I know that it's a different group than what maybe when Brad's days on the Rapid City Council were many years ago. But I think generally the community is at a place right now that haven't lived here for 50 years, but I do know that in my time and involvement, that there has been a pendulum shift in sort of attitudes, and we're not there. I mean, there's still a lot of folks that don't have economic opportunities that maybe they would like, but it's improving, right? And it's investments like these that validate our efforts, but also demonstrate to the rest of the world and the communities that we want this place to succeed. And the airport is just another recent example of that, I guess, is my point.
I could make one more announcement. I was at a DOT meeting this morning. There is a rebuild project that's going to take place in the summer of 2018 that will take Highway 13 and repair it and repave it from County Trunk Z all the way out to Smoky Joe's Corners or Highway 73. The 4 lanes that are concrete from basically the city limits out to Range Road is going to be tore up and blacktopped. From then on, it's going to be repaired and patched out to there. So The biggest concern that I had was how's the traffic pattern going to be? And Glenn, I can assure you that they said they'll have 2 lanes of traffic open at all times. So they'll be able to work within those parameters, and that should bring in a new entrance into the city in our area. It's going to again look a little more friendly to the users. We're talking about some upgrades to the side of the roads and stuff like that. That'll kind of make it sparkle again like it should. That blacktop, I don't know or that concrete, I can't imagine how many years old it is. I can remember it's a long time. But
If we only had a bypass.
yeah, that's
Next budget, right, Scott? You're already working on the next
Yeah, right.
project.
We get a time, we'll
Yeah,
work.
that's right, that's right.
so. Jeremy, is there anything you wanted to show on the map for anybody that's watching, or basically the handout here would kind of explain the.
Yeah, I guess I could do a quick, the handout is here, I'm sure many of you have already seen this, but there's 2 projects that we're working on, right? One project that we're working on now, a federally funded project that's under construction, that's the realignment of a runway and elimination of the oldest pavement on the airport and a hazardous entry to a runway are being eliminated, squared off, and parallel taxiway being built here. Next year, another federally funded project is going to rebuild the short runway, as Arnie mentioned earlier, and connect the parallel taxiway, the rest of the parallel taxiway that's not going to be finished this year. So this whole area is going to be redone with federal dollars, and that kind of took up the commission's, that's at least where the focus of federal dollars has been for the previous 5 or 6 years, and that's kind of what prompted us to realize in order to get what we need to accommodate Sand Valley, we're gonna have to find some other sources, and that was probably the first conversation I had with Scott, was how and where might we find money for this stuff that we know we're gonna need quicker than the federal process, which probably would have stretched out into 21, 22, 23 before we would have got money for any of this, and even the apron area might not have been eligible at that time. So the focus of that funding request was for the infrastructure here for the accommodation, which includes the parallel taxiway out to the north end of the airport, the expansion of the apron for aircraft parking, and then its connection to the runway here. So it's just, it provides circulation, it provides easier off and on access for aircraft to the runway, and it provides more parking for the aircraft, which we expect is going to be, the amount is going to continue to grow every year. So, any questions about that?
Perpetual state of construction.
For the next couple of years, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been a lot of requests for hangar rental?
Yes.
Yes.
There have been threats even to go to other airports that have hangar rentals, and I couldn't even begin to imagine how many people, we'll get a call that says nothing but, do you guys have hangar space for a Citation 10? No, okay, thank you. And I don't know if that means they're then immediately calling other airports looking for accommodations for their planes, or what that, but you might not never hear from a Citation 10 again, and that to me seems reasonable. Well, they found other places to go. So,
Is there any kind of a sense of what the going rate is for rental?
to build or for rental in the hang?
Yeah, for what the planes will pay.
The biggest planes, considering you're going to spend $1 million to build the hangar to fit them in, $700 to $1,000 a night isn't overwhelming or concerning from what I'm gathering from other airports who have invested in a hangar that can fit the large Gulf Streams and things like that in. Those guys, to them, that's cheap insurance. $1,000 for a night in the hangar is certainly a lot cheaper than an insurance claim on a hail damage on a $40 million plane. So,
Can't move the plane.
We've had conversation with planes that are the smaller size, like is down at the south parking area or now, and they're typically are, if they put them in a hangar, it's $500 for the night. Those smaller ones that are a little smaller, but still it's not a $500,000 hangar. I think the most of the hangars we were looking at were upside of $750,000 to $1.5 million in order to do that. Again, we're have to see if how it works out, if there's other ways for us to get those necessities, which would be nice. We've invested in most of the other things that the traffic is looking, such as laboratory services. We do have de-icer for in the fall and that, and with the with us purchasing the fuel truck, those are the primary three things that they've asked us for, other than is there hangar space.
Ground power unit.
Ground power unit, I guess that's the fourth unit that some of the bigger jets would just as soon hook up to ground power to run their accessories rather than running the motors. So anything else? If not, I guess you can.
Call this
do
meeting
the final.
adjourned.
But I would like to offer the opportunity, if the weather is cooperative,